Picture Hong Kong in the 1950s. Neon lights glow across crowded streets, cargo ships unload day and night at Victoria Harbor, and businessmen rush through Central to make their next deals. Amid this chaos and opportunity, a young man from a poor family begins his rise. That man would later be known as the Superman of Hong Kong, Ka-shing. But before the skyscrapers, before the boardrooms, before the billions, his life was nothing but hardship. Why should we care about Ka-shing today? The world is full of billionaires: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, names that dominate the headlines. But Ka-shing's story is different. He wasn't born in Silicon Valley. He didn't inherit a fortune. He didn't graduate from Harvard or Oxford. He grew up in poverty. His father died young. At just 15, he left school to work full-time. His road was not paved with privilege, but with sweat, vision, and iron discipline. His life is not only about money. It is proof that a boy with nothing can rise to control global empires. If he dares to endure hardship, look further ahead, and dream bigger. In this series, we will explore the life lessons and business philosophy of Ka-shing. Each chapter will reveal a different side of his journey: childhood, money management, entrepreneurship, leadership, investments, time, charity, and his most inspiring quotes. This first chapter, the introduction, sets the stage. Together, we will answer: who is Ka-shing? Why was he called the Superman of Hong Kong? Why are his words still quoted decades later? And most importantly, what lessons can we apply from his life to our own? Born in 1928 in Chaozhou, Guangdong Province, China, Ka-shing grew up during war and poverty. When his father died of tuberculosis, the family fell into crisis. At just 15 years old, Li quit school to support his family. His first job was in a plastic factory, where he worked 16 to 18 hours a day. From this hardship, he drew his first lesson: the world is my university. He would never stop learning, not from books in a classroom, but from sweat, survival, and experience. Ka-shing was called Superman not for physical strength, but for his ability to see opportunities where others saw disaster. When the market collapsed, he bought. When old industries declined, he pivoted. When others hesitated, he acted. He became Hong Kong's richest man, with businesses in over 50 countries: real estate, ports, telecommunications, retail, and energy. At one point, 1 in every 7 people in the world used a product or service from one of his companies. The nickname Superman was well earned. What makes Ka-shing different from many other tycoons is his wisdom in words. He doesn't speak like a cold executive. He speaks like a mentor, a father figure who has tasted the bitterness of life. Some of his most famous quotes include: "Time is the fairest resource. Whether rich or poor, each of us has only 24 hours a day. In business, I am not afraid of losing money. I am only afraid of losing credibility. Wealth only has meaning when you use it to benefit society." Simple yet profound, each line reflects the principles that carried him from poverty to power. You may ask, in today's digital age, why should we learn from an old tycoon from Hong Kong? Because his principles are timeless. When he said to divide your income into 5 parts: living, education, relationships, investment, and charity, that wasn't just financial advice. It was a life strategy. When he placed credibility above profit, he was teaching us that trust is the most valuable currency. When he rose at 5 a.m. to work with discipline and seize every moment, he showed us that success comes from daily habits, not miracles. Though born in China, building his empire in Hong Kong, and investing worldwide, Ka-shing is not just a local hero. He is a universal role model for anyone who believes in self-made success. And what makes him even more admirable is his simplicity. Despite his billions, he lives modestly, eats frugally, and works with the same discipline he has always practiced. He doesn't just preach values, he lives them. So, why does Ka-shing's story matter? Because it proves that greatness is not reserved for the privileged. It is forged in hardship, shaped by our choices, and sustained by our values. If a boy who quit school at 15, who worked in a plastic factory day and night, could rise to control ports, telecoms, and real estate around the world, then perhaps the limits we believe in are not as fixed as they seem. This is not only his story. It is an invitation for all of us to dream bigger and act bolder. To understand Ka-shing, the legendary billionaire, we must first look at Ka-shing, the boy who grew up in hardship. His fortune was not built on privilege, but carved out of adversity. Days of hunger, nights of uncertainty, and years when the future seemed defined only by survival. Ka-shing was born in 1928 in Chaozhou, Guangdong, China. The 1930s were years of turmoil, war, poverty, and social unrest. For most children, such an environment would have crushed ambition. But for Li, hardship became the furnace that forged resilience. His family was poor but respected. His father, a schoolteacher, instilled in his children the value of learning. Li excelled in school, bright, disciplined, and curious. There was hope that education could lift him out of poverty. But fate intervened. His father contracted tuberculosis, a deadly illness at the time. Without money for treatment, the family fell into despair. When his father passed away, Li was only 15. The loss was not just of a parent, but of the family's sole breadwinner. Overnight, his dream of schooling collapsed, and he was forced to support his family. From that painful turning point, he carried a lifelong conviction. The world is my university. Without classrooms or books, Li studied life itself. Every hardship, every job, and every encounter became a lesson. He found work at a plastics factory, enduring brutal shifts of 16 to 18 hours a day. His hands blistered, his body exhausted, yet he pushed forward. Meals were meager, plain rice and vegetables. Clothes were worn until they nearly fell apart. While others complained, Li observed and absorbed. He studied machines, processes, and how the business was run. The factory floor became his classroom. As he later reflected, others earned wages. I earned wages and knowledge. Behind the glamorous idea of being self-made was the harsh truth of poverty. Li often went hungry. Some days he had no idea how to provide for his mother and siblings. He endured humiliation, dismissed as just another poor factory boy. But instead of bitterness, he transformed pain into determination. Every cent he earned, he saved. Every grueling day he saw as an investment in the future. Out of these struggles came lifelong lessons. Discipline. Living frugally, spending less than he earned, saving every penny. Observation. Even as a lowly worker, he trained his eyes on markets, systems, and demand, thinking already like an entrepreneur. Resilience. Bearing the weight of loss and responsibility, he became tougher instead of broken. Self-education. Though school ended at 15, his learning never stopped. He read, questioned, and learned from every possible source. Many of his most famous principles originated in this period. Adversity is the best university. If you cannot endure hardship, you cannot achieve great things. In youth, endure more suffering. Later, you will be grateful for it. These were not theories, but truths hammered into him by life. What set Li apart from millions of struggling Chinese families was his response. Where others saw despair, he saw training. Where others gave up, he pressed forward. As a teenager, he became the head of his household. He supported his mother and siblings, providing food, shelter, and stability. This responsibility forced him to mature quickly and developed in him a sense of duty that never left. Even as a billionaire, he often said that success was meaningless if one could not care for family. Those early years gave him no wealth, but something far more valuable: character. He understood the dignity of work. He learned the fragility of life. He realized that knowledge must be pursued beyond classrooms. He knew opportunities reward those who are prepared, even in dark times. By his late teens, Li was no longer just a factory boy. He was a young man with burning ambition and life lessons many never acquire in a lifetime. For Li Ka-shing, childhood was not a time of ease or innocence. It was a battlefield of poverty, loss, and survival. Yet instead of destroying him, hardship forged him into discipline, resilience, and vision, the foundations of his empire. And so began his shift from mere survival to long-term strategy. The next chapter of his journey would be defined by his renowned principle of money management, the 5-bucket rule, the philosophy that guided him toward lasting wealth. By the time Li Ka-shing reached his late teens, he had already endured more trials than many face in a lifetime. He had lost his father, shouldered the burden of supporting his family, and toiled for endless hours in a plastics factory. Yet hardship alone does not create fortune. What set him apart was his mindset, his philosophy of money management that transformed survival into prosperity. Li Ka-shing firmly believed that financial discipline was the cornerstone of wealth. To him, money was not merely for spending, but a tool to be directed, multiplied, and used with purpose. Out of this conviction came one of his most well-known systems, the 5-bucket rule of personal finance. He often advised the young, no matter how little you earn, divide it into 5 portions. This rule was not just a budgeting technique. It was a life philosophy, ensuring that every dollar worked for long-term growth, rather than fleeting desires. The first bucket, living expenses. This covered essentials, food, housing, transportation, and clothing. Ka-shing urged frugality, even austerity, in one's early years. Share a room, eat simply, avoid luxury. He once remarked, "If you cannot endure a simple life when you are young, you will not achieve a successful life when you are old." This discipline allowed him to save when others indulged. The second bucket, education, for books, courses, and skills, anything that sharpened the mind. Although he had to quit school at 15, Lee never stopped learning. He invested heavily in self-education, reading newspapers, studying markets, listening to mentors. He believed knowledge is the best investment. It pays the highest interest. This bucket was about building capacity. A poor man with skills is only temporarily poor. A man without skills will eventually lose whatever he has. The third bucket, relationships. Money set aside for building connections, inviting friends, colleagues, or mentors to meals, and cultivating trust. Lee understood that success is never solitary. Opportunities come through people. As he often said, your network is your net worth. This was not about extravagance, but about investing in goodwill and future opportunities. The fourth bucket, investment reserved for ventures, side projects, or saving toward larger opportunities. Ka-shing emphasized starting small, but starting early. The point was not immediate gain, but developing the habit of risk-taking and growth. Opportunities are always hidden. Only those who prepare capital and courage can seize them. This was the seed of wealth, money working even while one sleeps. The fifth bucket, giving, for charity, donations, or simply helping someone in need. Even while struggling himself, Lee believed generosity built character. Giving developed empathy, humility, and a higher sense of purpose for wealth. He felt is meaningful only when it benefits society. This ensured that money served you, not the other way around. The balance of the 5 buckets. Without the first, you cannot live. Without the second, you cannot grow. Without the third, you are isolated. Without the fourth, you remain stagnant. Without the fifth, you lose purpose. Together, they form a complete system for building not only financial stability, but also intellectual, social, and moral strength. Ka-shing practiced this philosophy in his own youth. He lived frugally, ate cheaply, dressed simply, and saved. Yet he still bought books and newspapers, invited mentors for tea to learn from them, invested small amounts whenever possible, and gave what he could to support relatives and neighbors. This consistency earned him trust. People saw he was disciplined, generous, and dependable. Later, when he needed loans to start his own business, friends and family were eager to support him. Though conceived decades ago, the 5-bucket rule remains strikingly relevant. In today's consumer-driven world, it reminds us that wealth comes not from income alone, but from how that income is managed. Many spend 90% of their earnings on lifestyle. Lee advised 30%. Many cut education costs first. Lee placed it second. Many see networking as waste. Lee treated it as investment. Many delay investing. Lee said start immediately. Many give only when rich. Lee said giving must begin early. Money saved is seed. Money invested is tree. Money given is fruit. Those who divide their income wisely will never be truly poor. A man who spends only on himself will remain small. A man who spends on learning, trust, and society will grow. The 5-bucket rule was never just about riches. It was about balance. It taught, live below your means. Never stop learning. Value people as much as profit. Grow steadily, not overnight. Give back, so wealth has meaning. Through this system, Ka-shing transformed his meager factory wages into the foundation of an empire. It was not luck. It was not inheritance. It was discipline, applied every day, year after year. And with these principles ingrained, he was ready for his first major leap, the creation of Chung-Kong Industries. The buckets had prepared the soil. Now it was time to plant the seeds. By his early 20s, Ka-shing had already experienced more than most could imagine: poverty, hunger, and endless hours of grueling factory work. Yet he had also saved carefully, pursued self-education relentlessly, and built a modest circle of mentors and friends who trusted his honesty. The 5-bucket rule had prepared him. Now it was time to leap forward. At just 22 in 1950, Lee made the boldest move of his life. He launched his own company. At the time, Hong Kong was overwhelmed with refugees, industries were rebuilding, and resources were scarce. Amid this turbulence, Lee identified an unlikely opportunity: plastic flowers. Plastic was gaining global popularity as an affordable, durable substitute for natural materials. Artificial flowers, in particular, were in high demand for weddings, funerals, and decorations. Where others dismissed them as trivial, Lee saw promise. He recognized that success often arises not from grandiose ideas, but from practical goods people actually use. He later remarked, "Opportunity is often hidden in ordinary things. Those who see it first will win." With borrowed funds from relatives and friends, who trusted him because of his integrity, Lee established a small factory. He named it Chung Kong Industries, after the Yangtze River, Chung Kong in Cantonese, symbolizing strength and resilience. The factory was modest, its resources limited. Workers crowded into small spaces, and Lee himself labored harder than anyone else, managing production by day, studying markets by night, and surviving on only a few hours of sleep. He was not just the owner, but also the worker, manager, salesman, and strategist. In those early days, competition was fierce. Dozens of small factories churned out plastic products. But Lee distinguished himself with one quality above all: trust. If customers placed orders, he delivered, on time, even if it required working through the night. If quality was questioned, he corrected it immediately. His principle was clear: in business, I am not afraid of losing money. I am afraid of losing credibility. This relentless honesty earned him loyal clients. Soon, Chung Kong developed a reputation for reliability, a rare quality in post-war Hong Kong's chaotic economy. As demand grew, Lee reinvested his profits. He bought better machinery, expanded his workforce, and improved product quality. Within just a few years, Chung Kong evolved from a small workshop into a rising star of Hong Kong's manufacturing sector. Lee himself never stepped back. He walked the factory floor, spoke with workers, inspected products, and ensured standards were upheld. His leadership was disciplined, hands-on, and deeply respected. Yet challenges were constant. Shortages of raw materials, labor unrest, and political uncertainty all threatened his young company. On one occasion, a major order was nearly canceled due to shipping delays. Instead of panicking, Lee personally negotiated with the client, explained the situation with candor, and offered compensation. Not only did the client remain, but they praised his integrity. This episode reinforced his conviction that relationships and trust outweigh short-term profits. But Lee's ambition reached further. He wasn't satisfied with selling artificial flowers alone. He studied international trade flows, consumer patterns, and market opportunities. He realized Hong Kong, positioned as a global hub, could serve as a bridge between East and West. So he began exporting to the US and Europe. His vision was never confined to Hong Kong. He was already thinking globally. He once said, "Do not wait for the world to come to you. Go to the world." Inside Chung Kong, Lee built a culture of loyalty and discipline. He treated employees fairly, paid wages on time, and rewarded diligence. In return, his workers labored with commitment, knowing their boss valued them. At the same time, he demanded excellence, long hours, precision, and dedication. His philosophy was simple: work harder than anyone else and expect the same from your team. By the mid-1950s, Chung Kong had grown into one of Hong Kong's leading plastic manufacturers. Lee Ka-shing, once the impoverished boy from Chaozhou, was now a respected entrepreneur. But Lee understood that success in business requires foresight. Plastics were lucrative, but no industry lasts forever. To survive, he would need to diversify. That vision would later propel him into real estate, telecommunications, and beyond. Still, Chung Kong remained the foundation, the training ground where he sharpened his skills, built his reputation, and defined the core values of his empire. From these early years came some of his most enduring principles. Do not despise small beginnings. Great enterprises grow from them. Credibility is more important than profit. Profit can return. Credibility once lost never does. Work harder than others, think further than others, and act earlier than others. Lessons from Chung Kong's rise. Start small, think big. from plastic flowers to a global vision. Trust is capital. His integrity turned customers into long-term partners. Reinvest relentlessly. Every profit was reinvested to expand the business. Adaptability. He understood industries evolve and prepared for change. Hands-on leadership. He led by example, never asking others to do what he would not. The story of Chung Kong is not about artificial flowers. It is about a young man who turned adversity into opportunity, discipline into strategy, and trust into lasting success. Chung Kong was the first seed of Ka-shing's empire, an empire that would one day stretch across continents and industries. In the next chapter, we will explore the philosophy and leadership principles that enabled him not only to build a company, but also to guide a global empire. By the late 1950s, Chung Kong Industries had expanded from a small plastics workshop into one of Hong Kong's top manufacturers. Yet to Ka-shing, building a factory was only part of the challenge. The greater task was shaping a reputation and a leadership style that would endure for decades. He knew that businesses rise and fall and industries shift, but principles remain. For Lee, the cornerstone principle was credibility. One of his most quoted beliefs was, "In business, I am not afraid of losing money. I am only afraid of losing credibility." For him, trust was not just a moral virtue, it was a competitive advantage. A company with credibility could retain customers during hard times. A businessman with credibility could borrow when opportunity knocked. An employer with credibility could win loyalty from workers. This conviction influenced every decision he made. Ka-shing was known as a hands-on leader. While many bosses stayed in their offices, he regularly walked the factory floor, spoke with workers, and checked products himself. He demanded high standards, but he also embodied them. He worked longer than anyone else, never asked employees to do what he wouldn't do, and lived with the same frugality he expected from his team. This consistency earned him respect. Workers saw him not as a distant figure, but as a man who lived the values he taught. Lee's leadership was firm. He required loyalty, discipline, and long hours. But he also practiced fairness. Wages were paid on time, and those who worked diligently were rewarded. He once stated, "If you want to be a good leader, you must first learn to be a good subordinate." Because he had once been a laborer himself, he understood the hardships of workers. This empathy made his leadership demanding, yet humane. Unlike many entrepreneurs chasing quick gains, Lee concentrated on long-term value. He reinvested profits instead of indulging in luxuries. He expanded cautiously, ensuring sustainability. He built enterprises with endurance, not quick returns. He often said, "If you only think of today, you will lose tomorrow. If you think of tomorrow, you will win today." This forward-looking mindset enabled him to survive economic turbulence and seize chances others overlooked. Lee also treated relationships as a form of capital. He built trust not only with employees and customers, but also with banks, suppliers, and even competitors. He became known for honoring agreements even when they cost him money. This reliability made others eager to collaborate. Banks extended loans easily, suppliers gave him priority, and partners sought him for ventures. In a business world where many cut corners, Lee's honor became his edge. He also placed great value on adaptability. He often told young people, "Change is the only constant. If you do not adapt, you will be eliminated." And he lived by this principle. In the 1960s, when plastics began losing profitability, he pivoted into real estate. Later, he expanded into shipping, retail, telecommunications, and energy. His leadership was never about clinging to one sector, but about predicting shifts and moving early. Some of his most enduring lessons from this era include: opportunities are for those who are prepared. A good reputation is better than a fortune. Success does not come from luck, but from preparation, diligence, and timing. Do not wait for the right opportunity. Create it. These were not abstract ideas, but guiding principles reflected in his daily actions. Despite rising wealth, Lee remained humble. He dressed modestly, avoided extravagance, and lived far more simply than many peers. This humility was not weakness, but strategy. It kept him focused, helped him avoid unnecessary rivals, and reminded his team that discipline mattered more than show. He once said, "Luxury is the enemy of progress. Simplicity is the ally of success." From his leadership journey, several key lessons emerged. Lead by example. Work harder, live simply, embody your values. Credibility above all. Reputation is the foundation of business. Think long-term. Sacrifice short-term profit for lasting success. Adapt quickly. Anticipate industry changes and pivot early. Balance toughness with empathy. Be strict but fair, demanding yet humane. By the 1960s, Lee had already built a solid base. Cheung Kong was thriving, his reputation was strong, and his leadership style was firmly established. But he also knew that leadership meant anticipating the future. Hong Kong was entering a new phase of growth, with real estate, shipping, and finance becoming the engines of prosperity. Lee was prepared. His credibility ensured financing, his discipline gave him capital, and his vision showed him the way forward. The stage was set for his transformation, from successful manufacturer to global magnate. Li Ka-shing's business philosophy and leadership approach were not crafted in luxury offices, but forged in hardship, discipline, and relentless focus. He built his empire on credibility, led through action, and always thought long-term. He adapted to change, valued relationships, and combined authority with humility. These principles became the DNA of his empire, explaining why his businesses not only survived, but flourished across industries, decades, and crises. In the next chapter, we will see how these principles guided him into real estate and telecommunications, the fields that would make him one of Asia's most powerful figures. By the 1960s, Cheung Kong had grown into a thriving plastics manufacturer. Yet plastics were no longer the booming industry they had once been. Competition intensified, profit margins narrowed, and the outlook grew uncertain. Many entrepreneurs would have been content, managing a profitable factory, living comfortably, and enjoying their success. But Li Ka-shing was not like most. He believed that a true entrepreneur must anticipate change before it arrives, rather than merely react to it. He began searching for the next great opportunity, and he found it in land. Entering real estate. During the 1960s and 1970s, Hong Kong was transforming rapidly. Refugees poured in from mainland China, driving up demand for housing. The growing economy fueled construction of factories, offices, and commercial buildings. Real estate was fast becoming the cornerstone of wealth in the city. Lee saw this shift earlier than most. He quietly and strategically began acquiring land. Then came the turning point, the 1967 Hong Kong riots. Political turmoil shook the city, investors panicked, and property values collapsed. Wealthy families, fearful of instability, sold their holdings at low prices. Where others saw danger, Lee saw opportunity. He invested heavily in land and property at bargain prices. His belief was clear. Opportunities are hidden in crisis. When others retreat, the brave advance. His bold move paid off. As Hong Kong stabilized and the economy recovered in the 1970s, the value of his holdings skyrocketed. Almost overnight, Lee became one of the territory's largest private landowners. Cheung Kong was no longer just a plastics company. It had transformed into a real estate powerhouse. Lee focused on delivering high-quality residential and commercial projects. His developments earned a reputation for reliability and value. Unlike some developers who cut corners, Lee upheld his principle of credibility. Buildings were delivered on time, quality was assured, and customers trusted his name. By the late 1970s, Cheung Kong was recognized as one of Hong Kong's leading property firms. The Hutchison Whampoa acquisition. In 1979, Lee made a landmark move by acquiring Hutchison Whampoa, a historic British trading company, from HSBC. This was no ordinary deal. Hutchison had been a symbol of colonial influence for more than a century. For a Chinese entrepreneur to take control of such a company was unprecedented. The acquisition elevated Lee to the status of an international tycoon. Hutchison's businesses spanned ports, shipping, retail, energy, and more. With one decisive step, Lee transitioned from a local businessman into a global figure. He later observed, "If you want to achieve something extraordinary, you must dare to take extraordinary steps." Expanding into telecommunications in the 1980s and 1990s, Lee once again showed his foresight, this time in telecommunications. He recognized that mobile phones, then luxury items, would soon become indispensable. Through Hutchison Whampoa, he established Hutchison Telecom, expanding into Asia, Europe, and beyond. One of his boldest moves was creating Orange, a mobile operator in the UK. Lee invested aggressively, turned it into a major player, and later sold it for billions. He also launched 3.3, one of the world's first 3G networks, again betting early on new technology. Lee's telecom strategy reflected his guiding principles. Enter early, move before others recognize the potential, think global, expand beyond local markets. Leverage capital, use credibility to secure financing. Exit smartly, sell at the right time to maximize returns. This approach turned Hutchison Whampoa into one of the world's premier telecom investors. Lessons from real estate and telecoms. From these ventures came some of Lee's most memorable insights. Invest ahead of the times. When others do not see the value, you must see it first. Do not fear turbulence. Fear standing still. Business is like sailing. The wind changes constantly. A good captain adjusts the sails. His journey through real estate and telecommunications offers timeless lessons. See crisis as opportunity. His contrarian purchases during the 1967 riots prove the power of bold vision. Diversify wisely. He pivoted from plastics into real estate, then into telecoms. Think globally. From Hong Kong apartments to European mobile networks, his vision knew no borders. Credibility as a brand. Trust defined his reputation across industries. Adapt relentlessly. Every decade brought change, and he was ready to move with it. Building global empire. By the 1990s and 2000s, Ka-shing presided over one of the world's largest conglomerates. His empire spanned multiple industries. Ports, Hutchison Port Holdings, among the world's largest operators. Telecoms, Hutchison Telecom, Orange, and 3. Retail, Watsons, the largest international health and beauty chain. Energy, investments in utilities and infrastructure across Europe, Canada, and Asia. Real estate, extensive holdings in Hong Kong and mainland China. From land to technology, from housing to mobile networks, Lee had built a truly global empire. The visionary edge. Ka-shing's success lay not only in building companies, but in anticipating the future. He bought land when others were selling. He invested in mobile phones when few believed in them. He consistently turned crisis into opportunity and vision into achievement. As he once put it, success comes to those who are prepared, those who act early, and those who dare. In the next chapter, we will move beyond his business ventures to explore his personal discipline, the habits, routines, and time management strategies that fueled his extraordinary journey. By the time Ka-shing had become one of Asia's wealthiest men, people often asked him, "What is your secret to success?" Most expected him to speak of billion-dollar deals, bold investments, or clever strategies. Yet, Lee's answer was much simpler: discipline and time. To him, time was the most equal resource in the world. Every person, rich or poor, has the same 24 hours each day. The true difference between success and failure lies in how those hours are used. A legendary daily routine. Even into his 80s, Ka-shing followed a strict routine that would challenge men decades younger. Early rising. He woke at 5 a.m. every morning, regardless of when he went to bed, reading in news. His first hours were spent reading newspapers, analyzing markets, and staying informed about global events. Exercise. He walked or played golf regularly to maintain physical health and energy. Work. He worked long days, from early morning to evening, meeting partners, reviewing reports, and making decisions. Reflection. Nights were reserved for reading, reflection, and planning ahead. This routine was not glamorous, but it was powerful. Repeated day after day, year after year, it compounded into extraordinary success. Lee often reminded people, time is the fairest resource. Whether rich or poor, each of us has only 24 hours a day. He also said, you can make up for lost money, but you can never make up for lost time. To him, wasting time was worse than losing money. Simplicity and discipline. Discipline also defined Lee's lifestyle. Despite his billions, he lived simply. He wore modest suits, often the same style for years. He ate plain meals, avoiding indulgence. He rejected wasteful habits, gambling, extravagance, and distractions. He once remarked, luxury is the enemy of progress. Simplicity is the ally of success. For Lee, simplicity was not stinginess. It was clarity. By stripping away excess, he could concentrate on what truly mattered. Leading by example. Employees often observed that Lee worked harder than anyone in his companies. Even as a billionaire, he personally reviewed documents, asked sharp questions, and mastered details. He believed greatness came not from bursts of brilliance, but from relentless consistency. As he put it, if you work harder than others, think further than others, and act earlier than others, success will come. Time as an investment. Lee treated time like a portfolio. Every minute was either wasted or invested. He invested his time in learning, reading, listening, observing, building relationships, meeting people who could teach him or open doors, planning, looking beyond today's problems to tomorrow's opportunities, health, ensuring he had the energy to sustain decades of hard work. This mindset transformed hours into assets. The power of consistency. Many dream big but fail to follow through. Lee's true edge was consistency. For more than 6 decades, he maintained the same habits: early mornings, frugal living, and relentless learning. Just like compound interest, small, disciplined actions accumulated into monumental results. His principles were straightforward. Wake early. Begin before others. Stay ahead. Read daily. Knowledge is the compass for good decisions. Value health. Without strength, success cannot last. Live simply. Focus energy on essentials. Be consistent. Success is built by daily discipline, not rare inspiration. Respect for time. Lee's respect for time was absolute. Meetings never started late. When traveling, he carried books and reports, ensuring no moment was wasted. Even golf became purposeful. He used the game to strengthen relationships and explore business ideas. Every action had meaning, for health, knowledge, or connection. Discipline over talent. Lee often said talent alone was not enough. Many brilliant people fail because they lack discipline. Genius is not the key to success. Discipline is. Without discipline, talent is wasted. His own life reflected this truth. He was not born wealthy, privileged, or highly educated. What he possessed was discipline, and that became his greatest advantage. The core of his success. Ka-shing's empire was not built only on bold deals or visionary investments. It was built day by day on the foundation of discipline and time management. He woke early, worked tirelessly, lived simply, and treated every moment as an investment. For him, time was more valuable than money, and discipline was the bridge between dreams and reality. As the next chapter unfolds, we turn from his personal discipline to his broader sense of responsibility. How Ka-shing evolved from a billionaire into one of the world's most respected philanthropists. By the 1980s and 1990s, Ka-shing was no longer just a successful entrepreneur. He had become one of Asia's most influential tycoons, with interests across real estate, telecommunications, ports, retail, and energy. Yet Lee consistently emphasized that wealth alone did not define success. As he often said, wealth only has meaning when it benefits society. For him, the purpose of amassing billions was never personal indulgence. The true measure of wealth was how it could be used to create impact. The roots of his philanthropy. Lee's giving was shaped by his own past. He knew the sting of poverty, hunger, and limited opportunity. These hardships convinced him that great fortune carried an equally great responsibility. He once explained his philosophy this way: money is like water. If it is blocked, it becomes stagnant. If it flows, it nourishes life. This belief, that wealth must circulate to generate growth, became the foundation of his charitable work. Founding the Ka-shing Foundation. In 1980, Lee created the Ka-shing Foundation, LKSF, with the mission to advance education, healthcare, and humanitarian aid. Over time, the foundation contributed more than $3 billion globally, funding universities, hospitals, research institutes, and relief efforts. For Lee, the foundation was deeply personal. With 2 biological sons, he often referred to the foundation as his third child, one that would carry forward his legacy of giving. Education as the greatest investment. Forced to leave school at 15, Lee placed immense value on learning. Through his foundation, he funded Shantou University in Guangdong, founded in 1981 and almost entirely supported by his donations, which grew into a leading institution. Scholarships for students across China and abroad. Research centers in Hong Kong, North America, and Europe. He often said, education is the best investment. It changes not only one person, but generations. Investing in healthcare. Lee believed health was the foundation of opportunity. Without it, no wealth or talent could flourish. His contributions included donations to hospitals in Hong Kong and mainland China, funding for cancer research, medical technology, and healthcare reform, Support for global research institutions such as UC Berkeley and Stanford University. Humanitarian aid and social support. The foundation also provided aid in times of disaster, earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, delivering funds and resources where urgently needed. It supported poverty alleviation, elderly care, and community programs. Unlike some tycoons who gave quietly or for tax relief, Lee made philanthropy a defining part of his identity. His words on giving, some of his most enduring thoughts on philanthropy include, "Wealth is not measured by how much you keep, but by how much you give. The responsibility of wealth is not enjoyment, but contribution. Money is a tool, not a master. It should serve humanity, not control it." For Lee, generosity was not optional, it was a duty. Criticism and humility. Not everyone was convinced. Some critics suggested that his philanthropy boosted his reputation and influence. Lee responded simply, "It is better to be criticized for giving than to be criticized for not giving." Despite his wealth, he lived modestly, showing that his focus was on impact rather than personal luxury. Inspiring a culture of giving. In Asia, where large-scale philanthropy was less common than in the West, Lee set an example for other wealthy families to establish foundations and contribute to society. The ripple effects of his giving were immense. Students he supported became leaders, hospitals he funded saved countless lives, and research he financed advanced science and medicine. Key principles of his philanthropy. Wealth must have purpose. Money without contribution is meaningless. Give early. He began donating while still building his empire. Focus on long-term impact. Education and healthcare create lasting change. Lead by example. His actions encouraged others to follow. Practice humility. Results mattered more than recognition. A legacy of contribution. Ka-shing's philanthropy was not an afterthought or an image-building exercise. It was a natural extension of his life philosophy. From a boy who once knew hunger, he grew into a man who created opportunities for millions. For him, wealth was never about yachts or mansions. It was about using resources to uplift society, to educate, to heal, and to inspire. As we move to the next chapter, we turn from his deeds to his wisdom, his timeless quotes and principles that distill a lifetime of experience and continue to guide people around the world. Throughout his long career, Ka-shing was admired not only for building companies and striking billion-dollar deals, but also for the wisdom he shared. His words, practical, simple, and deeply insightful, have been quoted by students, entrepreneurs, and leaders around the world. Lee did not speak like a scholar. He spoke as someone who had lived through hunger, hardship, risk, and triumph. His sayings were not theories. They were hard-won truths forged in experience. On time. Time is the fairest resource. Whether rich or poor, each of us has only 24 hours a day. You can make up for lost money, but you can never make up for lost time. Meaning, time is the great equalizer. Everyone has the same hours each day. The difference lies in how they are used. For Lee, time was to be invested wisely, in health, learning, or relationships. Lesson: manage time as carefully as money. Budget it, protect it, and use it to build your future. On money and wealth, divide your income into 5 parts: living, learning, relationships, investing, and giving. Wealth only has meaning when it benefits society. Money saved is seed, money invested is tree, money given is fruit. Meaning, money is more than consumption. It is a tool to grow wealth, improve oneself, build trust, and give back. Lesson: true wealth lies not in how much you keep, but in how purposefully you use it. On credibility. In business, I am not afraid of losing money. I am only afraid of losing credibility. A good reputation is better than a fortune. Trust is the currency that never devalues. Meaning, profits rise and fall, but reputation, once damaged, cannot be restored. Lee saw credibility as the foundation of every business and relationship. Lesson: guard your reputation above all else. On leadership. If you want to be a good leader, you must first learn to be a good subordinate. Lead by example. Never ask others to do what you would not do yourself. Authority without empathy is weakness. Empathy without authority is chaos. Meaning, leadership is service. It means guiding with empathy, discipline, and example. Respect is earned through action, not position. Lesson: balance toughness with compassion. Be demanding, but also fair. On opportunity. Opportunities are often hidden in ordinary things. When others retreat, the brave advance. Business is like sailing. The wind changes constantly. A good captain adjusts the sails. Meaning, opportunities rarely appear obvious. They hide in crises, neglected markets, and ordinary products. Success requires preparation and courage. Lesson: train yourself to see what others overlook. In crisis lies opportunity. On education: the world is my university. Knowledge is the best investment. It pays the highest interest. If you stop learning, you stop growing. Meaning, education never ends. Lai believed in lifelong learning, always reading, observing, and absorbing knowledge. Lesson: invest in yourself continuously. Knowledge compounds like money. On simplicity: luxury is the enemy of progress. Simplicity is the ally of success. A man is not respected for what he spends, but for what he creates. Live simply, so that you may think deeply. Meaning, wealth should not lead to extravagance. Simplicity keeps focus sharp and priorities clear. Lesson: don't let lifestyle grow faster than wisdom. On hardship: adversity is the best university. If you cannot endure hardship, you cannot accomplish great things. In youth, endure more suffering. Later, you will be grateful for it. Meaning, challenges are not obstacles, but training grounds. Li's own youth of struggle gave him resilience for life. Lesson: embrace hardship as your teacher. On vision: if you only think of today, you will lose tomorrow. If you think of tomorrow, you will win today. Do not wait for the world to come to you. Go to the world. Those who see further, act earlier, and work harder will always win. Meaning, success comes from foresight. Li thrived by preparing ahead of others, not chasing short-term gains. Lesson: look beyond the present, fix your eyes on the horizon. Ka-shing's words stand out for their clarity. Unlike abstract lectures, his wisdom was delivered in plain, memorable phrases rooted in lived experience. They endure because they speak to universal truths. Time is limited. Money must be managed. Trust is invaluable. Leadership is service. Learning is lifelong. Hardship builds strength. Vision determines destiny. His legacy is not only the empire he built, but also the lessons he left behind. His words remind us that success is not about luck or privilege, but about discipline, credibility, foresight, and generosity. As we turn to the final chapter, we bring together his life, teachings, and wisdom to reflect on what they mean for us today. After 9 chapters tracing the life of Ka-shing, from his early struggles to his global empire, from his philosophy of money to his philanthropy, we arrive at the final question: what does his story mean for us? Ka-shing has often been called the Superman of Hong Kong. Yet he did not fly, nor did he possess extraordinary powers. His strength lay in discipline, vision, and values. His story proves that greatness is not about privilege or luck. It is about the choices one makes. A life in reflection. Childhood. He lost his father young, left school at 15, and labored endlessly in a plastics factory. Money philosophy. He created the 5-bucket rule, a framework for financial discipline. Entrepreneurship. He founded Chung Kong, beginning with plastic flowers before expanding into a trusted business. Leadership. He built credibility as his core asset, leading with integrity and example. Real estate and telecoms. He turned crises into opportunities, acquiring land during unrest and investing early in mobile networks. Discipline. He valued time, lived simply, and maintained unwavering consistency. Philanthropy. He established the Ka-shing Foundation, giving billions to education, medicine, and research. Wisdom. His quotes captured decades of experience in clear, enduring truths. From boy to billionaire, his journey reflects resilience and foresight. Timeless lessons. 1. Hardship is training, not tragedy. Li's poverty could have broken him. Instead, it shaped his strength. Adversity is the best university. Lesson: treat hardship as preparation for resilience. 2. Time is irreplaceable. Money lost can be regained. Time lost is gone forever. Time is the fairest resource. Each of us has only 24 hours. Lesson: protect your hours. Use them intentionally. 3. Discipline is empowerment. His simple lifestyle, plain suits, modest meals, strict routines, was not deprivation but focus. Luxury is the enemy of progress. Simplicity is the ally of success. Lesson: simplicity liberates energy for growth. 4. Credibility is wealth. He built his empire on trust, never breaking his word to customers, banks, or partners. I am not afraid of losing money, I am afraid of losing credibility. Lesson: reputation is the most valuable asset you own. 5. Vision creates advantage. He thrived by anticipating trends and acting before others. If you think only of today, you lose tomorrow. If you think of tomorrow, you win today. Lesson: train your eyes on the horizon, not just the present. 6. Wealth must serve society. He believed money was a tool to educate, heal, and create opportunities. Wealth only has meaning when it benefits society. Lesson: success is measured by what you give, not just what you gain. A universal story. Ka-shing's journey resonates with all. To the poor, he proves beginnings do not dictate endings. To the young, he shows discipline and learning outweigh privilege. To entrepreneurs, he teaches that foresight and credibility build empires. To the wealthy, he reminds that generosity defines true success. Despite his vast empire, Lee lived humbly. He was not a flashy tycoon, but a disciplined man who never forgot the boy who once starved. This humility made his lessons even more powerful. They came from lived truth, not lofty ideals. His nickname, Superman of Hong Kong, carries symbolic weight. He did not soar with capes, but lifted himself from poverty to power through vision and tireless effort. His superpower was discipline, foresight, and credibility. The invitation of his story. Lee's life poses questions for each of us. Are we using time wisely? Are we investing in ourselves through constant learning? Are we protecting our reputation? Are we preparing for tomorrow, not just today? Are we giving back, even in small ways? As he said, success is not for yourself alone. It is so you can create value for others. Ka-shing's life shows how one man, starting with nothing, can shape industries, transform cities, and touch millions, not only with wealth, but with wisdom. His story challenges us to rise above adversity, discipline ourselves, think long-term, and give generously. That is his enduring legacy.